The White Ship Disaster. Terrifying last moments on the ship. The White Ship Disaster was one of the worst maritime disasters in British history, famed as the finest vessel in the Norman fleet. On November 25, 1120, the White Ship sank due to poor weather conditions. Over 300 people aboard lost their lives, including the legitimate heir to the throne, King Henry I, William Adelin. Among the dead also included Adelin's half-sister, Matilda, and his half-brother, Richard. Thomas Fitz Stephen captained the White Ship at the time of the incident. Only one person survived the tragedy and told the tales. The White Vessel ship sank in the English Channel near the Normandy coast off Barfleur. Adelin's death on that fateful day would lead to a civil war period in England known as the Anarchy. In the year 1120, King Henry I reigned supreme. He was in control of both England and Normandy. During this period, King Henry I fought and defeated lots of his enemies, including his brother Robert Courthouse. The king also defeated numerous treacherous barons who were enemies to his rulings. At the time, the king convinced the French king that he should acknowledge his legitimate son as heir to the throne, William Adelin, as well as Duke of Normandy. Who is William Adelin? William Adelin was the only legitimate son of King Henry I and heir to the throne. William was his father's favourite child, trained from childhood, and backed with political power by his father. The king permitted his son to sign royal documents at a very young age. He even allowed barons to swear allegiance to him and alongside the young prince. During the king's travels, William was appointed regent, a position he performed well. He was made Duke of Normandy by his father and was on his way to be a successful king. King Henry I also had too many illegitimate children, a daughter and son born to him by his main wife Matilda of Scotland. Matilda and William were the king's only legitimate children. The rest of his children were born to his numerous mistresses. The king treated all his children with love, giving them various essential positions in his kingdom. The king's daughter was married to the Holy Roman Emperor. What happened and how did the White Ship sink? King Henry I often travelled as the Duke of Normandy. He made frequent travels to see some of his people and to be seen by them. He needed to calm festive frontiers, seal new ones, hand out royal justices, and raise taxes from his treacherous barons. It was unavoidable to travel under these conditions. In November of the year 1120, the king and his sons had travelled to Normandy, and they travelled to acknowledge Prince William as successor Duke of Normandy and rightful heir to the throne. The prince was also betrothed to the daughter of the Count of Anjou. With the agreement between King Henry and William's marriage to the eldest daughter of Anjou's count, the prince's future was very bright. The king and all his children were preparing to travel back to England from Barfleur in Normandy. Captain Thomas Fitz Stephen offered to take the king back to England through the English channels. His ship, known as the White Ship, was one of the most delicate vessels at the time. Thomas was an experienced captain whose grandfather had earlier sailed the king's father, William I the Conqueror, through the English channels during the Norman conquest of 1066. Captain Thomas was eager to have similar achievements like his grandfather. Captain Thomas informed the king of his various skills and experience. How was the perfect man to take him through the English channels back to England? Meanwhile, King Henry I had earlier made other arrangements on returning back to England. The king informed the captain of his decision. He approved Captain Thomas's request, but informed him that he had earlier chosen a fine ship for himself. The king entrusted in his care his sons and many nobles to transport them safely back to England. The king, instead of making the journey on the White Ship, permitted his children, including the prince and several of his illegitimate children, to travel by ship as well as other young nobles present at the time. He returned back to England through the arrangements he had done earlier. Before the journey via the White Ship, the crew members asked the Prince Williams for wine, and he granted their request. Enough wine was provided to the crew members and the majority who were aboard the White Ship. Plenty of wine was provided. They drank to their satisfaction and were overdrunk. The priests who had earlier arrived with other ministers to pray for their journey were laughed at and insulted by the crew who were drunk. Drunk crew members drove away from the priests and rained abuses on them. Some people noticed the drunk state of the crew members and decided not to travel along with them on the White Ship. One of those who refused to travel with them was Adelin's cousin, Stephen of England, who excused himself with the reasons of having stomach upsets, alongside others who had refused to travel with them. The white ship left the port when it was already dark. By then, the king had already embarked on its journey in another vessel. Estimated to be aboard the white ship that night were some 300 people, including 50 crew members, according to records. On the way, Captain Thomas boasted that even though the kind had earlier left on their journey, that the white ship was very fast and could meet up the king's vessel. The people aboard in their drunken state cheered the captain on. The white ship sped through icy waters. Within a few minutes of leaving the port, it hit a submerged rock and sank. The rock was known as Quillboof. The white ship sank immediately. Most of the crew members who were aboard drowned. There was chaos, horrific scenes. There were screams, cries for help, but no one seemed to hear them. The prince was quickly guarded into the safety of a dinghy by his bodyguards, and they began to sail away. The prince was about sailing away when he heard the cries of his half-sister Matilda. He tried going back to save her. As he was going back, others who were looking for safety and trying to save themselves tried jumping into his boat. The boat was overwhelmed by the drowning people. It capsized, and the prince drowned with them. Only 2 people survived the white ship tragedy. They clung to a rock or debris that night. One of the men who survived was known as Berold, a butcher from Rouen. The second survivor later got drowned, Geoffrey, the son of Gilbert of Lagal. Captain Thomas swam ashore. On sighting the 2 earlier survivors, he asked them of the whereabout of Prince William's heir to the throne. He was informed of the prince's death. The captain affirmed there was no need for him to stay alive, as he had let the king down in protecting his sons, especially his heir. Having no idea of what to tell the king, Captain Thomas disappeared into the water and drowned himself. The news had reached England. A young boy was sent to inform King Henry I of the son's demise. Once the news reached the king, he wept bitterly and fell to the ground. The king retired to his chambers and wept bitterly. King Henry I later got married again, but never had a son. He made the daughter Empress Matilda heir to the throne. Upon his death, there was war as a result of the king's nephew Stephen insisting that he was the rightful heir to the throne. The series of events led to a civil war known as the Anarchy.